G'day, Sticks here. Thanks for tuning in. I'll preface this video by saying that I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll give it a red hot crack, like with most of the things that I aspire to. Okay, so I've been neglecting this channel a little bit well, not really of late, for some time now, but I do have a video which I'm looking to put up for everybody to view. I've also got a number of videos on my computer of a full teardown and rebuild of the AL320G lathe that I have. Another quick change tool post video. Got some comments, people were appreciative because there's really not that much in the way of videos out on YouTube at the moment for that model of lathe. There is a small number, but certainly not as much content as some would like, myself included. Okay, so what are we going to do today? I'm going to be making one of these things. Well, part of one of these things. So this is the top end of the gear housing, which lives at the top of a steering column from Model T Ford. It's a planetary gear set inside, reduction gears, steering wheel sits on top, output follows the shaft down to the steering ball joints is probably how I'm going to describe them. Steering box is not really correct, but pretty rudimentary device. I'll go to a cut in a moment and I'll talk about where this sits using a video reference and how everything interacts. But long story short, I'll take this guy off. Long story short, with my Model T, which I have, it's a build that I finished a few years back. It's an ongoing work, an ongoing labour of both love and hate at times. But I like putting brass onto my Model T. It's an absolute mishmash of different parts and years, but it still is a Model T Ford. Okay, so what am I doing? Put that over there for the moment. So this guy right here. So it is just the cap which holds a shaft, which the steering wheel sits on, a keyed shaft, it's a keyway through there, as a hardened pinion, hardened washer, and then a ground hardened sleeve, which fits quite nicely like such. The steering wheel sits on here. As I said, I'll put another video in a little bit later on and we'll go over how exactly it's all put together. Now, what I have always run on my Model T as a steering cap was this guy. So it's just pressed steel. I actually don't know if this is an original or not. I think it isn't, given that the knurling on the side has next to no wear on it. And a few other bits and pieces. But does this work? Yes. Do I like it? Yes. But I like brass more. So I've been very, very lucky to be able to get my hands on one of these guys. It's an original from between 1908 and 1910 is my understanding. This one's in extraordinarily good condition. There's no marring through the bores, there's no marring on the top. The knurling is still in good nick, as is the thread on the inside. I don't know how much these are to purchase originals, new old stock, reissues. I enjoy making things more than I do. Well, I enjoy purchasing things. I enjoy making things. So we're going to recreate this guy. So what am I doing it with? Well, brass. I'm doing it with brass. This guy, it's an 80mm bit of round bar. It's 100mm long. I ordered that online a week or two ago and it's finally arrived. Had to get it shipped in because trying to get this sort of brass in small quantities in Perth here is irritating. It's irritating. Cool. So I will hope to put all of these video components together into one video so you can watch them in one spot, in one session, but who knows. We know these video series tend to blow out a fair bit into multiple videos, but relatively simple device. But first up, I haven't been able to get my hands on any tech drawings or technical specifications, geometries and such for this. So the first thing we need to do is measure obviously all of our critical dimensions as well as our aesthetic dimensions. I'm going to look to recreate this as much as I can, or as accurately as I can anyway. There will end up being changes between this and that, of course. But I'll look to try and either minimise those or hide them. So if you have one of these on your car and mine ends up a bit different, call me out. I'm actually keen for that. But let's start taking some dimensions. And there goes the lump. Alright, so I have some utilities for taking dimensions. Paper is a good one. My model, which is a good one. Caliper, thread gauge, and a pen. Pen is also extraordinarily helpful for taking dimensions. This is an imperial measured item. The thread looks to be imperial. It might be Whitworth. I'm not actually intimately familiar with Whitworth, and I have no real desire to be intimately familiar with Whitworth threads. But I was able to get a good reading off that using imperial thread gauge. So let's start. Now, how this appears on the screen might be a little funky. I'm shooting over the top of myself from the front. I hate having a camera over my shoulder because I'm a klutz and I'll knock it over and I'll end up injuring myself, and then this video will never see the light of day. Sweet. Alright, what we're going to do first up, I probably could CAD this better and faster. I actually prefer having, I'm no drafts person. I prefer having paper anyway as a reference, size reference for whatever I'm doing. If I need to at a later point, I'll photograph it because it ends up with oil and shit and maybe blood all over it. It'll end up with oil and maybe blood all over it. There probably won't be shit involved, but we'll crack on. So, rough shape. What I'll do actually, I'll bring this up to the camera and we'll have a look at just in general. So it's a revolved part, so if you can see that from the front, just picture that going around and around in circles forever. We have knurl, there's a reduced shoulder, there's a small flat on top here and then a taper. Now there's a small radius between the taper and the vertical section there, but it's a flat vertical otherwise with a small radius on the top side of that vert as well. I've got a shoulder. The top face here has a very slight counter bore. That might just be for washer locating. I'll be putting a copper washer in here afterwards as well. Then we have a bore. Bore is an important dimension, the size of that bore. So where this axle, shaft, arbor that the steering wheel mounts on, so steering wheel on top, and it seats down here on that shoulder. This is a bushing for that particular steering shaft. So he'll go in there and it holds it firm. So we want next to no play, axial play up here. End play within reason can be eliminated using washers, spacers, etc. But I want as little axial play as possible up here. Cool. So the bore's pretty important. Another important dimension is going to be between the bottom, where the thread's going to seat, and then the top face there. We can get away with a few bits and pieces there, but I want to try and keep that original. We only have so much room for adaptation in the length of this shaft. Alright, next up, looking in. What do we got? So, yeah, this is all bored out through here. It's all hogged out and then bored out. If you can see in, yeah, I think you can actually. There we are. Oh, camera, yeah, good. If you have a look in there, there are still remnants of the casting process. That's a pretty rough finish. So I assume this has all been, the entire thing's been cast, and then it's been cleaned up through a turning process of some description. Next important thing is the thread, which we can see. I'm pretty good at this left and right thing. We can see a thread in there. Now, using my thread gauge, which I prepared earlier, thankfully, it turns out to be 18. How are we going to do this? 18 TPI. I'll use the opposite part of the thread. So if we can get a good look in that, and we can bring it up close, it's 18 TPI. So that's what we're rolling with. So main cap thread, 18 TPI, fantastic. Now I'm also going to use the bottom part of the assembly, which that will screw into. I'm going to use this for size reference as well. So, what size is our diameter where that thread sits? This is obviously not going to be perfect, but come on, there we go. So we're going to have a look at that one, that way. So assuming the camera is focused on that, we're looking at 76 millimeters. So given wear on this and this, we can pretty safely call that 3 inches. So I will work out the minor diameter for the part that I'm going to make, but cool. 3 inches. We're going to call that main cap thread diameter 3 inches. Thread has an A in it. 3 inch or 76.5 millimeters. That's not right, but I'll leave it for the moment. Happy days. All right, next up, we're going to start plotting out bits and pieces. So I'll do a rough drawing. We'll do just the side profile of this guy. So we have like so, down, taper. Flats, we have 2 flats. We have a knurled section, which is stepped out a little bit. We're going to come in and then down, in and then down. Small radius down here. Alright, so there, side profile. Let's start taking some measurements. Alright, so calipers. Alright, so that is going to be 3.32 millimeters on that guy up there. So there's every chance that all of this would make significantly more sense if I was taking these easier numbers, if I were doing this with an imperial, either inch standard or fractional caliper. I'm not going to do that. All of the stuff around the outside that I'm taking measurements for now, none of those are particularly critical dimensions. So that's fine. I'll sum up the total after I do the little bits, and we'll get a sanity check on that as well. Alright, so let's have a quick look at this guy. So that vertical section, I'm going around the radiuses there. We're going to call that 8 millimeters. 8 millimeters on the vertical. Cool. Next up is the height of this tapered section. I don't want to get a rule or a straight edge or anything in there, so I'm just going to subtract that from the... I'm going to subtract the sum of the rest of the sections from total height once I'm done. That's going to be the easiest way for me to do it. Right, so knurled section, that is 6.74 millimeters. Our bottom portion here. I'll get him quickly. Close enough. Alright, that's going to be 10.26 millimeters. 10.26 millimeters. Alright, happy days. Total height. I'll try and do this to not skew all of my dimensions. I'll keep it generally square, my calipers. 40.64. So this whole thing, 40.64. Happy days. All right, let's work out the height of this tapered section. So 3.32 plus 8 plus 6.74 plus 10.26, 12, 5, sorry, 4 and 7 is 11, that goes there, 3 and 8, 11, 12, 18, 28.12 is everything else, so 40.64, 28.12, 42, 5, 0, 3, 10, 2, 12.52 millimeters. Sanity check that one. Let's bang out 12.5 millimeters. All right, cool. That looks pretty good. You probably get some parallax error from where you're looking at it, as did I, but that looks pretty good to me. So, that. 12.52 millimeters. All right, external dimensions done, happy days. Let's look at diameters. All right, do the bottom part first. 80.6. I'm going to do most of these diameters inside. Sweet, knurling, with a knurled section rather. 82.06. Happy days. Size of this step, we're going to be looking at, if I can try and get that outside of the fillets in the middle there, 5.8. 5.8 millimeters. Once I've done all this, I will neaten up the drawings and I'll use those as my reference drawings, but for the moment this will do. So 5.8 here, which means there's 5.8 there, which means there's 10.6 total. So this part is 82.06 minus 11.06. I'm going to do that again. Yeah, 11.60, sorry. 6 minus 0 is 6. Needs to be a 1. 10 minus 6 is 4. 1 minus 1 is 0. 8 minus 1 is 70. 70.46 at this portion here, on the inside of that taper. 70.46 diameter. Alright, next part's easy, of course. This section up here, what are we looking at? 31.3. And then the top, we're going to call that 40 clean. Next, through bore. Alright, what I'm not going to do is measure that. I'm going to measure this guy instead. 24.74 it says. Now I did actually throw a micrometer on this the other day, just a 0 to 1 inch micrometer, and it did work out to be that same value, so I'm quite comfortable that that is going to be 24.74. So let's just recreate that drawing, that shitty thing here, down. And this is just going to be the details for my internal features. Yep. No prizes for that drawing. Alright, so we have a bore coming through. That is 74.04 diameter. I am going to measure this and record it, but we'll be rolling off that 3-inch major on the outside of this guy. But let's have a look. Cool. 74.7, much the same as up here. I'm going to do it inside the diagram. All right, let's call that a thread. 74.7. Fantastic. Okay, from here I will relay again on the actual steering column what everything else in here is doing. None of the other dimensions in here are critical. There is a heap of meat between just above this knurl and then the bottom here. So I can actually give myself a quite generous thread relief at the deeper part of the internal thread here. But what does this say it needs to be? That is 11, 12, 13.14. Alright, so that extends up minimum 13.14. I'll give myself a generous thread relief there. Anyway, I will retain the extended boss on this part here, just for a bit of extra strength. But looking at clearances of the 3 planet gears which roll around in here, all the clearance in here is not critical. They have enough room to get about with no rubbing. And the more I put in here, the larger this cavity is. Granted, the more grease I can get in there, which is probably not a bad thing. If I leave too much material in there, it's going to weigh a fair bit. Not so much a drama. So I'll see how I go when I end up machining this part. But I think, for the moment, as far as those dimensions go, that's enough to get me by. I'll be able to do a lot of test fitting on the parts that this will be installed on, or its replacement will be installed on, either while it's still in the lathe, or on the removed steering column at the moment. So, next up, what we're going to do is head to the lathe, and we're going to start turning some good brass into scrap. Meet you over there.